It's been a while since I've done a sewing room tour, so I thought it would be interesting to show you my sewing room, talk about what I love, the changes I've made, some things I would do different if I could have a do-over, and what I absolutely wouldn't change. So let's go. So here's the sewing room view from the doorway. This is the fourth bedroom in our home. It is also the room over the garage. And there are a few things we did right away when we moved into this house. We put in a luxury vinyl plank flooring. There used to be carpet here that was quite old. We added a split unit for air conditioning. We do have central air, but this room was so hot in the summer and it was terribly cold in the winter. Very glad for that. We did change out the ceiling fan. Most of the time I do not run the ceiling fan just because it blows the patterns all over the place. I have two Kallax units laying on their sides, so I've got 8 cubbies across, 2 high, and I really like that. So let's come in. I'll show you section by section. I'm going to start from the door and I'm going to work clockwise around the room. The door has Mr. Bean hanging onto it. My friend Anna Ruth knitted him for me. He's been my sewing room companion in 3 different sewing rooms. Then we have a closet here, and I'm going to show you how messy it is. This is real life in the sewing room. There's not a light in here. I've got some extra sewing machines, a little vacuum, the stand, and some projects. And I don't think it's terrible. I don't mind showing you because I know y'all aren't going to judge me. From there, we move into a fabulous feature of this sewing room. Now, most of this is not sewing related, but this storage attic area off of the sewing room houses a lot of stuff. So I have a tiny little cube bookcase here. Inside it, I've got most of my sewing books, a few patterns. Back in the day, I used to put them in those notebooks. Long since outgrew that. I've got my light here, some bag making supplies. Most of this is household stuff. I do have over here, again, I'm just showing you everything. I have my snaps, my cam snaps and dies, some interfacing bag making. Those boxes on the end are all empty, and I'm going to talk about those in my Friday sews. More empty boxes, some things we're bringing to the grandchildren, birthday presents, luggage. This is most of the storage for the house, so I do have to share this. But when you see how fabulous my sewing room is, you won't feel bad for me. So we're coming back out into the sewing room. And let's head left because we're still going clockwise. Here I have a lot of my resources. These are most of the patterns I own. They are in envelopes stored on end, and you may be able to peek and see where I have written the pattern company's name. I group them by pattern company and it works for me. I have a large roll of tracing paper. I do like to trace my patterns and make adjustments, and I buy this right now. I'm buying it from Blick Arts, and that's also where I got my roller and paper cutter. Love that. Would buy this all over again. I've got some weights, paper weights, glass jars, different things. I am a rotary cutter. That's an award I got years ago. This is something I would not repeat. I made this with my father, which was a nice memory, the pegboard. The two of us built it together and I painted it. Was so proud of it, but I don't store a lot on it. Now it is handy. I've got several tools that I store here, so when we're doing some DIY around the house, we know exactly where to find it. What I keep up here is stuff that I use a lot. I've got my fray check. This is my buttonhole knife. I've got the little blocks and buttonhole opener there. The safety glasses are for when the grandchildren are sewing. I've got my applique, scissors, extra pair of snips. These are paper scissors. Honestly, They'd be even more convenient in a drawer on the cutting table, but since I have this pegboard, I'm using it. In here, I've got some extra bits, turners, tape measure. I've got some remotes for lights. I've got tape. My niece brought that back from Africa for me. I do like this point turner. There are times when this is just the thing I want to use. My friend Pat, who I used to work with at So Sweet, she used to call me Sunshine because I had a happy morning personality. She made me this mug rug. I couldn't stand to have tea spill on it. So I have it in my sewing room, adding a little bit of cheer. My glasses cleaner. This, a marathon that I ran, and I'm very proud of it. Happy memory. I did run that with some girlfriends. I was part of a running group. I got some hand sewing needles. My Y'all Be Nice sticker. I wish I could put one of those everywhere. My circle seam rounds. What are they called? Add a seam allowance. You know what these are. And a rotary cutter. I would not build this again. If I didn't have room for it in another sewing room, I would absolutely put it in a garage so it wouldn't go to waste. Down here on the countertop of my Kallax units, I've got my projector, a little lamp. I keep my laptop handy. I don't like how messy those wires are. They tend to stay messy. I've got my tape dispenser, pencil sharpener, because I trace and I like to use colored pencils. And let me show you the inner drawers. This one I have various things that I'm working on. So I've got some crochet projects, extra supplies. This one's not terribly interesting. This is my gracious plenty of zippers. So this is my zipper supply. I've separated them into different bags for the type of zipper, and I've got probably a lifetime supply of zippers here. If I ever get back into teaching sewing, then I will go through those pretty quickly. The third box is serger thread. Since I have an automatic threading serger, I have a Baby Lock Triumph, which is a combination serger cover stitch machine. I do change my serger thread to match the project. It just takes minutes, and especially for the cover stitching, I like for the thread to match. And again, there's a close-up of my patterns. It makes it really easy to find them. Love that system. That is definitely one that I will keep. I have a few drawers indoors here. This is probably something I would do differently. I had thought that I might like to have some things closed off and not as stacked. In here I have my Kindle, some interfacing, set you up here. I've got my buttons here, and I have some drawers. These have not been very sturdy, so these I thought would be a great idea, but maybe I could have gotten the same effect with baskets. I've got extra bobbins, my label maker supplies, and then over on the end, let me move you along here. So over on the end, this is my fast charger if I am needing to charge my phone quickly from filming these videos, which I do on my phone. This is convenient to have near my comfy chair. And I've got all my little iron-on stay tape. This is that forming tape. Love that. So I've got that here, and it stays fairly tidy. These are labels. This is a little felt pad if I'm, well, then I've got labels in here for labeling my bins, more labels. Here's my label maker, little offcuts of tracing paper. I will use these for children's clothes patterns. What's in here? This one's empty. It's going to bring you around to the corner of the room. Back up a little bit. There's my comfy chair. I've got my diplomas there. I love to sit in this chair. Sometimes I'll sit here and read, or I'll sit and edit my videos. I've got my laptop right there. This is kind of my command central in here. And I love my little star lights and my teacup bunting. Just a little bit of cheer. When you're hearing the humming in the background, that's my air conditioning, and I just got to keep it going. So here is my ironing station. I love my ironing board. My boys gave it to me when they were in upper elementary school for Christmas one year. They convinced Charlie. They said, Mama's been asking for a new ironing board for Christmas. I think she really wants one. And they were correct. It was one of my favorite Christmas gifts. It's a little wider, a little longer. I recently recovered it because it's really hard to find ironing board covers that fit it. This is a fairly new addition to the sewing room. Let me bring you a little closer. I did get one of these rolling caddies. I wasn't sure if I would like it, but I really do. What I like about it, I used to keep things hanging off of here, like this, for example, and it kind of worked, but they would fall. And I had this basket on top of here, and sometimes things would get a little bit tangled. So I got myself a little cart, and I've got everything I need for my ironing on the cart. I've got some Best Press. This is for a heavy spray starch. This is just water. This is for cleaning my sewing room. I've got my ham. I have some measuring guides, pressing cloths. This is for water for my iron, and a couple of other tools that I use only on the ironing board. So I find this super helpful. If I did not have a large sewing room, I'd probably not have something this big, but I have the room for it and I find it very useful. Now in this far corner is something that I would change. I have a sewing cabinet. It's really nice. I like it, but I think it would be better for a quilter, and I found a solution that I like better. But I don't use this enough to justify dedicating this much floor space for it. I love my little wall art here. My friend Jenna did this. She did the quilting, and it came out so pretty. I really do enjoy that. Makes my heart happy. Now here's the reason why I would not do the cabinet over again. I have a dedicated sewing space, so I keep my machines up all the time. And these two machines do everything that I need to do. And I love my table. I've got a height adjustable table, so I can get the height perfect for sewing. On the left, you'll see my new sewing machine. It's the Baby Lock Ballad. It does every kind of sewing that I would want to do. And then I have my Baby Lock Triumph. I have a love affair with this serger. It's a combination serger cover stitch. I would buy this machine all over again. It is definitely worth the money. I know I don't use all of the features, but I use hard the features I love. We're coming around to the other corner of the room, that clothing rack. I wish I'd gone with something a little bit smaller. Sometimes it is nice to have the tall rack for the projects I'm working on, if I want to let something hang, or if I'm showing it to you in a video. But this is a little bit large. Maybe not so much the height, but how wide it is. That might be something I would do over, but I don't hate it. All right, you can see I moved the mirror. That is something I absolutely would change. It's one of those mirrors that has a ladder pull out leaning. So when you have it set up like that, you get a distorted image of yourself. Not the greatest. It takes up a lot of space. I would have much rather had a less expensive one that hung on the back of a door. I'd find that much more useful. Here is most of my fabric. I love how I store it. I have a video that I will link on the end cards of how I store my fabric. I love how I store my fabric and how I store my patterns. It really works for me. I've got the boxes labeled. The boxes aren't too big, not too small, kind of the Goldilocks situation. They fit really well on these wire shelves. The boxes are a little bit pricey. They're the really useful box, and it's a 32-liter size. But because they fit well on the shelves and make good use of this space, I would do it all over again. I've got some thread storage there, a couple of projects ongoing in those little floral or leaf-looking storage containers. And then on the top, I have some of my paper patterns that I've purchased, some more thread, and my elastic. This is really working well for me. On the end cap of the shelves, I have some storage containers for sewing machine feet. I I probably only need one of these. I've had the Husqvarna Viking sewing machines for years. I had all kinds of specialty feet that don't work with my baby lock, so I have donated those to a friend. Found a good home for them, and maybe I will give her one of those organizers. I've just been hanging on to it because I think it might be really good for storing other sewing notions. So here's my cutting table. I also use this when I'm pinning garments. Love this, folding patterns. Get asked questions all the time about my pattern storage, so I'm going to give you a close-up of this. These are the envelopes that I use, and you can see the inch markings here. They are 12 3/4 by 15 inches, and they've got a little flap that folds in and they tuck. It's a cardboard mailer. They're rigid, they're sturdy, and I will use them over again. I decided this pattern wasn't for me, but I'm keeping the envelope and I'll put something in it that is for me. They slide in and out of the Kallax unit, so sturdy. I've had some of these types of envelopes that are probably 5 or 6 years old, and they still are holding up well. I have a few of these, just plain envelopes. I might use these if I'm separating out sizes for traced off patterns. Particularly, I use these for the Hudson pants, where I might have a size 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. This comes in handy, and sometimes I'll put these inside the mailers, or I'll just stand them separately on their side and file them away in my Kallax unit. Now, ideally, I would love to have a cutting mat that covers my entire table, but I'm using what I have. When I come to the time where this mat needs replacing, I will replace it with a mat that fits the table. And I have discovered there are certain brand mats that are just a lot nicer to use. I love the Creative Grids mats, and I know they're more expensive, but I think they're worth it. Having worked at a sewing center where they had a Creative Grid mat, it just makes it that much more easily to accurately cut your cuts. And even though I'm not a quilter, there very often I'm doing either bias strips, or I'm going to do a ruffle or something where I'm working on measurements instead of a pattern piece. And it's so much easier to pick out that 3/4, 5/8, or whatever the mark is on a really nice mat. But I will be using this, and I won't switch this out until I need to. This still has a good bit of life in it. Since I am someone who likes things tucked away and clear surfaces, in this drawer I've got my colored pencils. I have some pattern weights. This is where I use them, so this is where I place them. This is a bit of a business drawer, so I'm not going to open that up. I might have something with my mailing address on it, internet safety and all that. Let me take you around to the other side of the table, because there are drawers on both sides. This was marketed as a dining table, but I bought it for the purchase of using it as a cutting table. This is where I put my disappearing ink fabric markers. I got fabric glue, some extra pens, mostly marking tools in this drawer. And in the right-hand drawer, I've got some of my new feet. I've not put them away properly yet. I have my rotary cutters that I will call my A-team. I've got my pinking shears, pattern notcher, my extra blades, some spool caps, seam ripper. These are reading glasses, just in case. And again, these are some needles that need to be put away. I tend to keep things pretty neat and orderly, but every once in a while things get a little jumbled. I don't worry about that as long as I keep it generally neat. You'll see that I have the legs of my cutting table on risers. I got these from Wayfair. I think they might be 2.5 inches. Your traditional bed risers would put the table too high for comfort for me. Maybe for you taller people, you would like the higher bed risers. but I find that is the perfect height for cutting. And this is my sewing room. I realize how fortunate I am to have such a large space dedicated to my hobby. I do appreciate it. I have learned a few things over the course of the many years that I've been sewing. One of the biggest things is less is more. I had too many sewing supplies because I used to teach sewing. I thought I might get back to doing that. I did that on a volunteer basis at my church. I really got a lot from it, but it was just too much stuff in my sewing room. It was causing me anxiety. If I teach again, people will just have to pick up their own sewing supplies. I like a tidy sewing room, and one of the keys to keeping a tidy sewing room is making it easy to keep it tidy. I've got a place for everything. Usually everything is in its place, and I take the time to reset the sewing room most of the time between sewing projects. I have a large trash can that sits underneath my cutting table, and on the sewing table I have a mug that I'll put the little threads and little bits that I've trimmed away while I'm working at the sewing machine. That helps to keep that area tidy, which keeps the floor tidier. I'd love to hear your tips for what you do to make your sewing room more enjoyable. And if you don't have a sewing room, whatever your sewing space is, I know that many of you do what I did for years, and that is you take out the sewing machine and the supplies, set it up, work on your project, and put it all back. And there is a key to that. Leave in the comment section below any hints that you have for how to do this so that you can get more sewing done. I'd also like to know, what do you use that you love? And what do you use that you would ditch if you could have a do-over? I do like these storage containers for spools of thread. Very easy to get to, but it protects them from dust. And I generally try to keep them in some kind of order. Sorry for all the noise. I have a lot of thread. I used to do machine embroidery. I have so many colors of thread. I probably won't need to buy any for a long time.